Welcome to the deep dive. We've cracked open a pretty dense stack of sources today. History, cognitive science, political strategy, all to give you a shortcut to, well, some genuine insight.
That's right. And today we're taking a long, hard look at that political identity, often just labeled Republican.
Yeah, its foundations, which are maybe more conflicted than you'd think, the strategies that built its current shape, and the psychology, the powerful psychology that can keep supporters locked in.
And this is really more than just analyzing today's headlines. It's about tracing the, let's say, the DNA of a political movement. We're asking why people believe what they believe.
And what happens when these deeply held moral beliefs clash with, practical governing?
Exactly.
Okay, let's just jump right in then. There's a twist right at the start, something that really challenges the standard view of the American rights origins. If you look way back, some sources, like the philosopher Lind, point to this surprisingly spiritual core.
Right. For people like Thomas Paine, even some early religious Republicans, the Declaration of Independence wasn't just politics.
No, it was seen as an expression of Christ's social message. That's kind of wild.
It is. It basically placed moral conscience above your duty to the state. It was this synthesis right away of the sacred and the secular.
So your allegiance wasn't just to the government, but to what Lind calls nature and nature's God.
Precisely. And that created this, really potent political legacy built on moral obligation, not just law.
And Lind even uses this term, spiritual socialism, which, sounds loaded today.
Very loaded. But back then, the idea was it offered activists a kind of moral alternative, right? An alternative to violent revolution like you saw in Europe.
But it still kept that spirit of radical, necessary change.
Yeah, it suggests the roots of modern conservatism might actually be in this deeply spiritualized humanism. It's important context.
Because that moral fervor is still a huge organizing principle today.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of labels, Republican, it feels so American now. But globally, historically, that term's been, messy.
Oh, completely messy. You just have to look outside the U.S. for a second, like the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 39.
Right. That was the progressive Spanish Republicans fighting against Franco's right-wing nationalists.
Exactly. And Picasso, the painter, he was actually made director of the Prado Museum by those Spanish Republicans in 36.
So the label itself has this flexible, sometimes even a progressive history, which really highlights the internal complexity, even here in America.
It does. And that messiness leads us right into the contradictions here at home. We really need to talk about a prototype populist figure, Huey Long.
Louisiana's Huey Long, governor, senator back in the 30s.
A hugely consequential figure. He saw himself as the tribune of the people, connecting deeply with poor voters, the threatened middle class.
And his argument decades ago sounds familiar. Both parties, Democrats and Republicans, had failed. Power was just stuck with a self-serving elite.
Yep. And he believed only dynamic, kind of unconventional leaders could fix things. The sources are blunt. They say he was like a Trump.
Wow. Okay, so that vision of one powerful figure bypassing the system for the common man, that's a persistent thread.
A very persistent populist strand. But fast forward to the modern party, and that populist energy crashes into these two almost opposing ideological demands.
Right, the internal conflict. What are the two main groups the sources identify?
Well, on one side, you've got your small government types, the classic libertarians. Basically, they want individuals free from laws, regulations, maximizing autonomy.
Okay, and the other side?
The politically active evangelicals, they're fundamentally trying to legislate morality, enforce certain societal standards based on their beliefs.
Wait, hold on. How can a party really function when half wants less regulation and the other half wants more moral regulation?
That's the core tension. And the sources offer this really fascinating take on who the real progressives are in this equation.
Okay.
They argue it's the evangelicals who are the progressives of the right.
Progressives. That term is usually for the left. Why apply it here?
Because their focus, their definition, comes from worshiping a transcendent, future-oriented entity. They're focused on abstract ideals like justice, mercy, continued moral growth, sometimes even into the afterlife.
Okay.
And the sources suggest this gives them, and this is a technical term, a more dopaminergic approach to life.
Dopaminergic, right. Break that down for us. What does that mean politically?
Well, simply put, dopamine is about seeking reward, future potential. So the idea is this religious focus on a future reward, ultimate justice, a perfect moral future, makes them psychologically driven towards action, towards striving, not just maintaining the status quo like maybe a pure small government conservative might prefer.
So their future focus, seeking moral improvement now, which means action and often legislation.
Exactly. It's not just policy for them. It's like a psychological drive toward that promised future. That's why moral legislation is so non-negotiable for that wing.
That makes sense. Okay, so if the ideology is contradictory, the strategy, according to these sources, seems much clearer: systematic division.
Yeah, this is a pretty devastating insight, but one political minds have understood for ages. Henry Adams noted down a quote from Pascal.
Which was?
All men naturally hate one another. Adams then applied that to politics, calling it the systematic organization of hatreds.
Wow, that's bleak. The idea that success comes from channeling existing animosity.
It's troubling, yeah. And the sources detail the famous Southern strategy laid out by Kevin Phillips. It explicitly relied on this conviction that, quote, all politics comes down to who hates who.
And the mechanism was?
Brutally effective, apparently. The design was, as more Black Americans registered Democrat, whites who held racist views, negrophobes, the source calls them, would leave the Democrats and become Republicans. Calculated hostility to sort the electorate.
It really echoes that cynical line attributed to Karl Deutsch. A nation is a group of people united by a mistaken view of the past and a hatred of their neighbors.
If that's the foundation, then the language used becomes absolutely critical for maintaining the division.
Right. Rhetoric doesn't just describe things, it shapes how we see them. Like Nixon saying, I am not a crook.
And everyone immediately thought...
Denial cemented the frame.
Exactly. And you saw that counterframing with the contract with America in '94. Republicans had this big agenda.
And the Democratic response was just read the fine print, planting that seed of doubt, of hidden intent.
And this era of, let's call it weaponized division, really got turbocharged by Newt Gingrich. He was the definitive culture warrior.
He actively coached Republicans on language, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Told them to call opponents sick, pathetic traitors. Really inflammatory stuff. He was pushing this worldview centered on the dominant white male Christian figure in American life.
And the sources highlight his main slogan, America First. That phrase has a history.
A deeply troubling one. Charles Lindbergh used it before, WWII, in a pro-Nazi, very anti-Semitic campaign.
And even William F. Buckley Jr., a major conservative intellectual, reportedly thought the rhetoric of Gingrich's ally, Pat Buchanan, crossed the line into anti-Semitism.
Right. So the willingness to use this kind of loaded, divisive language, it really defines the strategy we're talking about.
Before we move off strategy, there's one quick descriptor the sources use for the Republican Party image psychologically. They call it the daddy party. What's that about?
It's a common political shorthand. If Democrats are often framed as the mommy, party nurturing, safety nets, community care, then Republicans get the daddy label.
Meaning?
Prioritizing order, strong leadership, clear boundaries, protecting the existing structure, sort of the authoritarian protector figure. It reinforces that idea of structure and strength being paramount.
Which connects back to the legislating morality point and even the Huey Long prototype. It's all about maintaining a clear, ordered group identity.
Precisely. And that leads us right into the psychology, why people cling so tightly to that identity, even when facts seem to contradict it. We need to talk about David Kahn's model, identity protective cognition.
Okay, identity protective cognition. Critical for understanding polarization, right?
Absolutely. Kahn basically says, once a belief gets tangled up with your self-identity or your group identity, changing that belief becomes incredibly costly.
Costly how?
Socially costly. You risk losing approval, acceptance from your peers, your group.
Okay, but here's the thing. Why are we seemingly more willing to be factually wrong about, say, climate change than about, I don't know, whether our own house is on fire?
Great question. It's because most big modern political issues, climate science, complex gun laws, economic models, they're abstract.
Right.
If you personally are wrong about the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, it imposes basically zero immediate personal cost on your daily life.
Yeah.
The weather doesn't instantly change because you denied the science.
But the cost of challenging your group's sacred belief on that issue, like admitting the science seems right when all your friends deny it.
That cost is immediate.
Yeah.
Social ostracization, being seen as a traitor to the group, it's huge.
So using your brain power to defend the belief, even if it's inaccurate about reality, actually makes a kind of good sense from a purely individual social survival standpoint.
Exactly. It's a mechanism for staying safe within your identity silo.
And this partisanship, it doesn't just warp complex beliefs. The sources say it alters basic perception, even memory.
Yeah, people are more likely to remember lies that support their side. But it gets even stranger. Some research found Republicans literally judge the skin tone of political figures like Barack Obama as darker than Democrats do.
Wait, really? Partisanship changes how you see color.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Your identity acts like a filter on incoming information, even visual information. And in lab tests, totally arbitrary teams, red versus blue,
Yeah.
brain scans showed people processed images of the other team as looking measurably less human than images from their own team.
Wow. Dehumanization happening at a neural level just based on group assignment.
And think about how this gets amplified by reality. We're sorting ourselves, not just online, but physically. Republicans and Democrats increasingly don't even live near each other.
Which makes that dehumanization process much easier, more complete. You don't encounter the other as neighbors.
Right. The sources also touch on maybe differences in psychological wiring. There's this observation that some people, quote, just want to remain narrow.
What does that mean?
Like actively rejecting outside information, arts, culture, facts, because they don't want to be told what to think or do. Reminds them of hating school, maybe. That rejection of expertise becomes part of the political stance itself.
And that defiance connects to the idea of the political troll.
Yeah, the sources draw a line there, suggesting that the characteristics we associate with internet trolls, delighting in annoying the overly sensitive, seeking conflict, aligns with a segment of the current political right. The source even claims this describes most Republicans.
Okay, that's a strong claim from the source. So putting it all together, contradictory ideology, a strategy built on hostility, identity protection, warping reality. How does this manifest in recent high-stakes political situations?
Let's look at two quick examples the sources raise. First, prescription drug prices under Trump.
Okay.
He had the authority, under existing federal laws, to potentially take action to lower prices, especially in 2017-2018 when Republicans controlled Congress.
And there was a specific tool mentioned, right? Like a presidential patent override power.
Exactly. Section 1498, often used for military stuff, but it allows overriding patents if prices are deemed excessive. The power was there.
Right.
But no significant action was taken. And the excuse given, that Democrats blocked cooperation, well, the sources say that made no sense because the authority was largely executive. It didn't need Congress.
So the political identity, maybe opposing regulation in general, overrode the specific populist goal of lowering drug costs.
That seems to be the implication. The identity trumped the action.
Yeah.
Second example, social media. Remember the complaints from Trump and others about Twitter shadow banning conservatives?
Oh yeah, huge issue. Drops in follower counts were cited as proof.
Right. But then the Twitter CEO explained those drops were because they deleted hundreds of thousands of spam accounts, bots, affecting everyone.
But the complaint didn't go away.
Nope. The core political belief that their group was being persecuted by biased tech platforms persisted, even with the spam data explanation. That's identity protective cognition playing out in real time. You filter the data to fit the belief.
Okay, that brings us to our final thought, something provocative to leave folks with. The sources mention historian Howe's cyclical theory of American history.
Right. Howe predicts that out of all this intense polarization we're seeing now, eventually, a new kind of egalitarian, unified America will emerge.
Like a high-tech version of the 1950s Eisenhower era, where Republicans eventually accepted things like the New Deal, unity after conflict.
It's a hopeful vision, maybe. But here's the sharp observation the sources pair with it. It's really hard to see what figures like, say, Steve Bannon actually like about that final unified outcome. Except for the chaos he envisions along the way.
So that leaves you, the listener, with a question. Is the current intense conflict for its most aggressive proponents just a necessary destructive phase to get to some new unified society? Or is the chaos, the disruption itself, actually the point?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Thank you for diving deep with us today. 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 Thank you for diving deep.